One of the best ways that I have managed to stay organized is with Real Estate Lifeline, having the ability to create tasks that aren't associated to a specific file because I know I'm going to be in that all day. I think I would have to quote my therapist who actually said, failure is just feedback. Don't take it as, oh, this agent didn't want to work with me, or this client didn't want to work with me, or this task didn't work. It just means it's feedback. Look at why and use it to carve your next path, your next step.
Transaction Care, the podcast. Welcome home to the #1 real estate show on the market. I am your host and resident care coordinator, Lillian Hernandez, but you can call me Lilly. My goal with each episode of Transaction Care is to demystify the business of real estate from my point of view and interviews from other voices within the real estate industry around the world. I'm giving you the keys. There are no gatekeepers here. Head to transactioncarepodcast.com to join my TC community and to be sure you are subscribed to Transaction Care, the podcast, so you know exactly when new episodes are released weekly. Welcome back to another episode of Transaction Care, the podcast. Today we have a very special guest, and I know I say that about all of my guests, but today is extra special. As many of you know, I am a real estate transaction coordinator, and I met this person maybe a couple years ago or so. Randomly, she needed coverage as she was in labor practically, and I took over some of her work. But as we know, TCs are very behind the scenes. We do a lot of work, and oftentimes the programs and the softwares that we use are not always catered to our liking or our needs per se. And she did something about that. And I can't wait to hear all about her journey and how she got there and what she's doing. And what she's doing does take a lot of courage. So we're going to break that all down today. So everyone, welcome Kristina Adragna to the podcast. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm good. I'm doing well.
Yeah. So you own Real Estate Lifeline. So for those listening out there, you should be aware. If not, now you know. But Kristina's going to break all of that down. But before we jump into that, can you just tell people what your real estate management platform is, just so we can get a bit of an insight on, what it is, what it does, who it caters to, and things like that?
Absolutely. So Real Estate Lifeline is a TC management software system. Basically, in a very condensed nutshell, it helps transaction coordinators with staying on top of, staying organized, and managing their files. And it's great whether you have one file or 90. It helps keep our users completely organized throughout their process, whether it's at the beginning, at the end. It's not just for the file as well. It also helps them run their business. So I know a lot of the systems I had looked into, it really just seems like, well, you can manage your file, but you couldn't manage your business. And so many of us are independent contractors. So we're business owners first. And we needed something that also catered to that need and not just to what we do.
That was a great intro, because I want people to know the importance of not just what a TC does, but the importance of having a transaction management platform that, just caters to them and the things that we go through, having to use multiple different platforms. And you saw a gap and a need and are filling that. So before we take a deeper dive into what you've been working on, let's talk about your journey a bit, how you got into real estate, why you got into real estate, and how's it going? Was this a career path you've always envisioned for yourself, or something just that aligned at the right time?
It was definitely something that aligns at the right time. It's a whole long journey, but essentially back in 2015, I was working with a leasing company, and my particular position got, what was the term they used? They restructured their company. And so my position was laid off. And of course, like for most people, it's traumatizing. You think it's the end of the world. And because I had that training in leasing, I actually got into admin positions with different real estate agents. And then from there, I started to learn more about what a TC was and what they did and their role throughout the process. And that fit my personality more. Mm-hmm. So eventually in 2019, I went full-time transaction coordinator. And that's really what led me into creating Real Estate Lifeline, was because it still drove me nuts for the longest time until we became actually launched, of how many systems you had to use to do your job every day. And, and that was the same issue I had when I was an assistant for agents. And I think it's still an issue for agents as well, is that if you want to run your business and run your files, you're using 20 different programs to do it.
Exactly.
And it's no wonder that, we get so focused on handling the business instead of growing the business. And again, that's across the board, is because we have to take care of all these miniature things and clicking around, and let me go into DocuSign, let me go into the forms, let me go into transaction management, let's me go over to my broker file. So the goal, the end goal with Real Estate Lifeline is to really be streamlined, where there's not so much bouncing around for the user.
I love that. Streamlining is so important. Efficiency. I've been working in real estate for so long, and it's important to just condense everything. So like you said, you're not clicking everywhere or signing up or paying for so many different platforms. So in terms of business ownership, did you have any background with businesses, or was this all just a manifestation of your decisions?
I went to college for business administration, but it's one of those things where I just don't feel like that actually prepares you for the real world.
Right.
I don't think I've applied anything really that I've learned there into what I'm doing now. And it's really been, and still is, a learning process throughout the entire time. And, they don't prepare you for that. And while I'm sure there are classes out there on how to start up a business, I unfortunately didn't take one. So, I think it's all been a learning process this entire time, but so far so good.
Right. And along that journey, as I mentioned in the intro, you and I met through just a connection of, you were going on maternity leave and I stepped in to cover for you briefly. And it's interesting because when you work alone, you're used to just managing your stuff. No one else sees behind the curtain. And it was the first time I saw someone else's work, and I was like, how is she doing this many transactions? Because in the beginning of my career,
and I say that about other TCs I know. I'm like, how are you doing that?
Right. So in the beginning, I'm sure it wasn't easy, especially, becoming a mother, or, having kids and whatnot, or depending on where you're located, transactions are managed differently. So in the beginning, how were you, if you were, just setting systems and boundaries in place, or were you just in survival mode? Like, I'll take everything I can get and figure it out later. How did you manage all of that in the beginning?
Thankfully, when I first started teaching, it was for one agent, and I built like my process from working with that one agent. And that was, I think, super helpful for me because I was able to tweak as I went. And then as I started to get more and more agents, that process only developed positively. And it wasn't like, oh, well, I have one process for this person and one process for this person and one process. I was like, nope, this is what I do. You can take it or leave it. But I think for the most part, having that template basically of a task list that I do for each file makes it 1,000 times easier to get and do a larger volume.
Got it. That makes sense. And were you just TCing for one state or one city, or had you expanded at that point?
I have expanded at that point. I originally started in Northern California, residential only, and now I do all of California and residential, commercial, air CRE. I mean, you name it, birds. I've probably done it. And a lot of it has just been education and learning and sticking to different checklists that are available.
Got it. Was there, I know you briefly touched on it, but was there any one particular moment or time period within those early stages where, you broke down how you realized, okay, this is how I do it and this is how it's going to work. But was there a specific moment when you realized, oh, I got this. I can, I'm catching my stride. I want to do more. And I mean, obviously you're doing a lot more nowadays, but in the first couple of years, was there a particular moment where you were like, okay, this is the time. I'm ready to expand, or was there some motivation behind that?
The motivation for me behind that was there's always been so much. My family situation, for one, really pushed for being able to have the flexibility of a stay-at-home job, as well as having the flexibility of telling people, no, I don't do that. Instead of being in a job where they're like, oh, hey, I need you to do this, and you have to do it.
Right.
It was comforting to know that, I was starting to be able to make my own hours and be there for my family when needed. And like I said, be able to create the business that I wanted, not fulfill the business of somebody else's.
Got it. And then how did you manage your time in terms of educating yourself on other locations? Did you have a coach, a mentor, YouTube University? How did you feel comfortable, not just expanding, because that mindset alone, just wanting to go outside of your comfort zone, specific locations can be intense as well. But how did you gain that knowledge of, okay, these are the other cities or states I want to work in? Did you get your license, certifications?
I have not expanded outside of California yet. I did try and dabble in North Carolina, especially when I moved out there for a year, and it just wasn't for me. But I haven't tried other states yet. For me, I did learn different areas of California, and as you know, Southern California is totally different than Northern California, and it can even vary. I do Bay Area, which is different than, Sacramento area.
Right.
And I think a lot of it boiled down to one, reading the contracts and reading it like 4 times before I sent out that first email for anything, and really relying on Facebook groups to ask questions to other TCs that have the experience in that area, that they're always pretty quick to answer for the most part, and they're always so kind and gentle about it. You don't have to feel like you're asking a stupid question. They're just like, oh yeah, you just do this, and or oh, here, you needed this form because this is what you need for that area. And so I've taken the classes for like through CAR, but they don't break it down by area. It's just, this is what a CAR contract is. This is the documents you use to let go. So it was really relying on fellow TCs to help guide me through answering a lot of the questions that I did have, especially at the beginning.
Yeah, those Facebook groups, I can't stress how important they are in anyone's journey. I think no matter what level of experience you have, you will have the moments where you're either the one providing the answers or needing the answers. And I belong to multiple, and I'm okay with that, because you just never know what type of questions you'll have that day, or, and they offer great resources as well, like workshops, events, retreats, things of that nature. And it's just nice to feel like you have a community outside of your own four walls that you're working in alone oftentimes.
I mean, and it's not for the most part, a lot of us are virtual.
Yes.
We don't work in office, and even if we did, there's usually a very small group. If you are a part of a large brokerage where you're an in-house TC and there are multiple TCs that work in-house, it's usually like three or four. It's not like this huge network that we can go into. It's not like we're, licensed by car and we have a special, abbreviation or something where we can target just those that are licensed and TC that we can, ask these questions to. So the Facebook groups have been invaluable, I think. Just making connections, being able to vent when days are hard or ask questions about, okay, if this is what I got, how do we correct it or what do we need? And even just telling some of the really odd things that happen to us, it's always a really great place to go to.
I think that's one of my favorite parts is just hearing people's just wild stories of the things that actually happen or things that people say. And it's funny. It's funny. But what is a typical, if you have one, a typical day or week in the life of you right now? Because I know you're juggling a lot of things. And is there a specific ritual or routine you keep to help you keep in line aligned with yourself and as sane as possible? Because I know for me, I have a morning routine that really is like a non-negotiable. And the days I don't practice one of those things, I'm just completely off. Even as simple as making my bed. Sometimes you're just getting up and rushing out the door, even if it's to just the next room over.
It makes a difference. I think for me, one of the best ways that I have managed to stay organized is with Real Estate Lifeline, having the ability to create tasks that aren't associated to a specific file because I know I'm going to be in that all day, every day. My old system had, if you wanted a task, it had to be associated with a file. And, I've tried paperless. Well, when you have a 2 and a 6-year-old, paper is theirs too. And so then it, gets drawn on or tore up or crumpled up. So paperless weren't working for me. I tried like Google Tasks in my phone and the email, and that still just didn't work for me. So having it where it was as simple as I literally did this just this week. I put a task in for a specific date and I said, okay, I want to call and make an eye appointment. Like I need to go get my contacts and glasses done. And being able to put that in Real Estate Lifeline and have it pop up just like all my other tasks, I actually did it. So that's been a huge adjustment to help manage my business, help manage my personal life, and manage my files all in one system versus, like I said, trying to have all these different locations and methods to just do one thing that's remind myself to do a task.
That is really cool. And if you aren't downloading Real Estate Lifeline right now as we speak, you are missing out. So let's just jump straight into it. Why Real Estate Lifeline? I know we talked a bit about it, but let's just get to the nitty-gritty of the inception of this project. And we're here, it's live.
Well, I'm not going to name names of what programs I have used.
No.
But I have tried other systems.
Yes.
And I had found one that really, really worked for me. There were things I wanted different about it, but it at least let me do my job. But that's all it let me do was my job. It didn't let me do anything else. And then, surprise, surprise, about it was maybe even like 3 months, maybe less, of getting this program, they announced like, hey, we're going away. We're not making any more updates. We're not doing anything. We'll have support, but it really didn't feel like support. And now they're going away completely. So it was like, okay, I need to find something and I need to find something else to replace it. And I was back in that bucket before, I found the line and I didn't like what was out there. And it was something my husband and I had always talked about doing, but we never actually did it. And we never actually were like, okay, let's find a developer. Let's find this. Let's actually get moving. And because I got that notice, it kind of kicked me into gear of like, no, this is the time to start doing it when what you normally use isn't going to be available and you don't like what else is out there. And I had the funds. I think that was a big factor too, is I actually had the money set aside to go and start this. And so that's what really triggered it, was having the system I normally used taken away. There's another system that I use that didn't really do the same thing, but had some updates, we shall say, that I just didn't sit well with me. And so it was like, okay, no, I feel like I'm getting all the signs basically of like, now is the time, you just need to go ahead and do it. And so we did. We made some really great connections and networks, thankfully, through people we personally knew, and got connected with a developer, and the price was right. And so we went ahead and we started forging this probably close to a year and a half ago now.
Wow. That was pretty fast. That went by really fast. I'm sure not for you in the moment, but just from looking on the outside in, I remember when
Yeah.
you're starting to like send emails and post about it, but you really, from my point of view, you really involved the people, TCs,
Yeah.
real estate professionals. You didn't just do this based off of your own experience, because even though you and I do similar work, the same work, we have different experiences. And it was important for I like that you continuously involved people throughout the process. You created a group and things like that. But I want to kind of take a step back up and talk a little bit about the funding. So you funded this on your own, as you said. And
Strapped 100% of the way.
wow, that's, well, respect. Respects,
Thank you.
because
Thank
it's
you.
not
It
easy.
hasn't been easy. There's been sacrifices the family has to make. And I think in the long run, they're not going to seem like sacrifices, but in the time being, yeah, it's been sacrifices for making just so that we can make sure that this gets funded and moving forward.
Right. And how did you go? How did you know this was the route you were going to take? Because did you have any technical background? Did you have any, like, because one day,
Still have no background in it. You would think a year in, I would understand some terms. I'm like, run that by me again. Like, let me go Google it real quick while you're talking. No background whatsoever. I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't even know what term I needed to look up to try and find somebody to
right,
create this for me. It was constantly talking to people I knew of like, hey, do you know? And this is like what I'm trying to do.
mm-hmm.
Do you know anybody who does that? And it was like making connection after connection before I finally met someone that was like, yeah, that's what I do. And this is what you're going to call it. This is, this. And so I was able to interview a few places and was finally able to connect with the company and working with and still are working with it.
Oh, wow. So, this is just me thinking of questions on the spot, because now I'm curious. Do they become a part of your, do they become a part of your team? Are they just outsourced? Are they now your employees? How has that been working for you?
They're an independent company. Obviously there's confidentiality agreements and non-competes and stuff like that. But essentially, if we ever wanted to, what have you, to take our program and find somebody else, we absolutely could. But they're doing an amazing job. They have knocked out so much, and they're amazing to work with. They're just really amazing to work with. They're kind. I feel so bad because they don't have a real estate background, and so here I am talking like, okay, so you have a listing and it can cancel, it can go pending, and then the pending portion cancels and goes back to active. You're trying to explain all these things to people who aren't in real estate, and their ability to understand what I'm thinking about and convert it into a program is astonishing.
I can only imagine because then you also don't have the tech background. So it's like you're both speaking two different languages to each other, but somehow
Yeah, it's
it
working.
happens, it's working, right? And you're making it
Yeah.
happen. So let's dive into the platform itself. This is made specifically for TCs, or could someone potentially like a realtor come in and sign up on their own and manage?
So down the line, we are going to have one for agents, and we hope to have a compliance system and a broker system. So it can be used by everyone.
Nice.
We've even actually had somebody who works in escrow be like, with a few tweaks, you could easily make this for escrow or for lenders. And for us, we're like, well, that would just be amazing to have one system that you can use essentially across the board, where you're not having, like, to us, it's the data entry that people aren't having to repeatedly put in. If you think about how many people touch a file and how much time, like, you're putting in the seller's name, and it doesn't sound tedious, but when you're putting in, the listing agent and their assistant and their transaction coordinator, and if they have more than one of either of those, or a co-listing agent, or, those lovely files where you have 7 sellers, or, 7 buyers, what have you, the amount of people having to re-enter that information is insanity. And so we're like, if we could just have it where, hey, the agent put it in because they're going to, go on their listing presentation, or they put it with the buyer, and the buyers are going to submit an offer. And now that's like the only step. The TC doesn't have to fill it out now because their accounts are moved. And now the TC can just start with like, hey, filling in the dates. And I don't have to enter in the property address. I don't have to enter in contacts. I'm just kind of starting where I need to start and move forward. Everybody's able to kind of move a little bit more, a little bit more efficiently, and hopefully take on more volume, because now time has been saved up by having that across the board data entry, basically.
Right. And that's definitely a part of the job no one tells you about when becoming a TC. And as you were talking, I'm just like relating so hard, because if I told someone, oh, what do you do for a living? And if I said, oh, I input names 10 times a day on the same transaction in 10 different platforms, they'd be like, why? They'd be like,
exactly. Just why are you doing that?
Yeah.
I don't know, really.
Right. You kind of just have to be there. But like I said, you saw a need and you filled it. And I think that's important to talk about, because you could have just sat and just continued doing things the way you were, frustrated, relying on these different platforms, but you didn't. And what was your mindset going into that mode of, yeah, I have to do this. I'm going to bear this weight. I'm going to try it. I'm going to take that leap.
Of like investing so much money into it and not knowing, is it going to work? And same thing with, like, all the market talk you hear right now. Like, oh, how many agents have left, giving up, hanging their license because the business is down. And, it's nerve wracking, but it's one of those where you look at the big picture and you're just like, okay, even if I have 1% of, the market of whether it's agents or TCs, it'll eventually start paying for itself and being able to create a profit. And again, hopefully being able to continue to grow into this amazing, abundant platform where more and more people can use it. And again, more and more people are saving time and growing their own businesses because they're using a platform that has been created with their needs in mind.
Right. What would you say was the biggest hurdle in this process? Other than probably speaking two different languages to the
I
developers
think
and vice versa.
biggest hurdle was actually finding a developer.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I feel like it took us months to find somebody. I mean, we were getting quotes for, they wanted $1 million
Wow.
to create it. They wanted $100,000 per month, and they'd only be able to get like half of it done in about 6 months. And so really finding a developer that was willing to work with our financial abilities, that found our missions and our goals to be something of desirable, right? It wasn't like, oh, well, we're just going to do this and then, okay, you're done. It's building that relationship between the two, especially since this isn't something like, oh, okay, we've pumped it out and now nobody ever has to touch it ever again.
Right.
We really have to have a solid relationship with the developer. And so it took us a while, but we finally found somebody through, like I said, through our connections of, it was actually a fellow TC introduced me to somebody who does marketing, and that marketing person introduced me to the developer. And I think that was the hardest part. And then obviously finances. It's nerve-wracking, it's hard, it's interesting. It's an interesting process to try and figure out. Same thing with like, are they going to meet their deadlines that they give themselves of like, okay, we're going to have this feature available and this time, especially when they don't know what's going to have to be behind what I'm asking.
Right.
So it's all very challenging, but I think every time we meet, it gets a little bit easier because we're understanding the processes on each side of it. We're understanding developers more, developers are understanding us more. So it's just constantly growing together to create something that's going to be, I think, life changing on everybody's side, for the developers, for us, for and our users. It's going to be something really great for them.
No, I can already tell just based off of your excitement for it and what you already have presented out in the world right now is amazing. What has kept you from quitting? Honestly, like I'm pretty sure there were moments where you're just like, forget all of this. But what was that like push or just that drive for you to just not quit through any of this? Or when you have those small moments where
There's so many things. There's the point where it's like we've already invested too much money to say never mind. The positive things is seeing the feedback from either our users within the group, or when they submit an email and they're just saying like, hey, this is really great, it's working for me. Those little things make it a big influence because it shows us that we are helping somebody out there and helping them with their business and helping them run their day to day and making it less stressful on them. So I think those things really help keep our mindset more positive than just sitting here like, oh my gosh, this is really overwhelming. And are we doing the right thing still? It's seeing that. And I think there have been times where when I do start feeling, oh my gosh, like what are we gonna do next? I think even just doing a post in either one of the other groups and just getting either people to join our group because they're interested or sign up for one of the free trials, it's like, okay, I can breathe again. Like people are still interested. I think that helps a lot.
That's amazing. I mean, community goes a long way. And even just from the beginning of you involving people, maybe not in the whole process, but just getting their feedback and learning about the market and applying it to what you're doing is so key. And are you still doing full-time transaction coordination while you're doing this as well?
Yes.
Okay, so what does that look like?
I have to fund it. It looks like, for the most part, I'm a transaction coordinator from about 9 to 5, and then I take care of my kids and dinner and getting them showered and everything. And then after that is when I start looking at Real Estate Lifeline of marketing and messages, and thankfully a lot of it can be done from my phone. So if we get a support ticket, it goes to my phone. I don't have to constantly check emails or anything like that. I can just immediately respond from my phone. We have meetings with our developers once a week. And so it's another thing that we just focus on. And that's the role I'm in as the owner. And what are we working on? What are we improving? What bugs did we have, if any? How do we fix them? What feature are we working on next? And that's really it. It's right now still in that point where I think a lot of it is answering questions, whether it's users or the developer on, okay, we're going to work on this feature. What does that mean to you? Like, what is it going to look like? What is it? How does it function? Is it connected to anything else? So a lot of it's also done through basically instant messaging of, we do have our weekly Zoom call, but a lot of it's done through messaging each other like, okay, I have a question, or, what is this? And it's, it's efficient. And I feel like such a millennial with it. Of knowing I'm running business with planning and Zoom calls constantly.
Yeah, no, that was probably one of the more fascinating parts to me, because as TCs, I think we tend to lean more on the introverted side versus, hey, I'm going to go start a tech company now. Not the most common next move for a TC, but like I said, I respect it. I'm watching as you're growing as well, because it's important to support people in our field that are taking a risk and putting themselves out there, putting their money out there, and staying driven and staying in it, and knowing that this isn't just for you, but this is the bigger, looking at the bigger picture of things is amazing. And you mentioned your husband a lot in this, so you guys are both partners in this whole process. So does he have real estate experience, business background,
No.
tech? So you both
His,
are in starting from the ground up.
yes, we're both learning as we go. And except for him, one of his disadvantages and trying to get caught up, I guess, is, he doesn't do transaction coordinating. He so he doesn't have that knowledge already. He's a lot like the developers of like, okay, explain it real quick. Except he has the benefit of listening to me every day. So he does have some knowledge. He just doesn't have working experience. But he's there constantly on our meetings, and it's also been very helpful to get his perspective, especially on layout and ease of the software, because what I may think is easy and like, yeah, everybody should understand that. For somebody, we also want to be user friendly. And hey, I'm a brand new PC and I'm going to use this system. Doesn't make sense for that person. Will they be able to figure it out without having to spend hours setting it up, or hours, correcting things or giving up? I feel like that was one of the things I heard with a lot of software systems out there was, I spent 3 months trying to set this up and I just threw my hands up and gave up because I couldn't figure it out, or I couldn't do it, or I couldn't do this. And so his input as somebody who doesn't do it every day is so valuable, because I'm getting that insight of, okay, if you were brand new to TC, would this make sense to you? And it gives us that ability to have that insight and that opinion of like, oh yeah, if that button's there, I would know to click it, versus, I might say, oh no, if you just put a plus sign, it's totally like everybody understands. So like, what? Why would you think that? I'm like, I don't know, because that's what I do every day. So, it's very useful. And I think we balance each other in that aspect of, you have the working experience on my side and you have the inexperience on this side that's able to make it so that it's user friendly, it's easy to use. You can set up day one and just start working from it, instead of hey, I signed up for this, I spent money on it, and now I'm going to have to spend weeks trying to figure out how to set it up just to use it.
I love that. One of my favorite words, easy. Because no, that was actually my story with I didn't use a transaction platform the majority of my career. I just started using one maybe 2 years ago, if that.
Mhm.
And I've never even told you this, but I had the same experience. I was like 3 months in, like it was just sitting there. I'm getting the monthly charge, seeing it. I'm like, what? I don't know how to use it, and I'm pretty tech savvy. Like I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not intimidated by it. I'm willing to try, but some of the platforms just were not user friendly. And once I got the hang of it, the even just the wordings they were the like the tabs that they were using weren't what I would call things, and then I would get
Mhm.
confused, or I basically felt like I was developing an app within their app.
Yes,
It wasn't
that's
much
how
like
I felt. And it just doesn't work for me, for me personally, especially because when I started to finally use the software system, I think I was sitting at about 25 pending and probably 15 to 20 listings, because I do work the listings before they go pending, before I finally was like, fine, I will get a TC management system. And it probably took me a good month to tweak
mhm.
it. And I mean, I was still constantly tweaking it. And I'm sure that's still going to be the same even with ours. But like I said, we put in a lot of defaults that
Mm.
theoretically, and I feel like we've gotten the feedback as well of, I'm not spending forever setting the system. You already have one in place, and it's just tweaking it enough to fit my personal process versus, okay, it's completely empty. And now I have to add all my own stuff. And okay, now let me think, what are my steps? What do I do? And tweaking it from there. So ease at setup was so important to us. So important to us. I can't, like, we constantly stress that with our developers. It was, has to be easy to use. And if it's not, then there's just not even like, it's not worth developing if we can convince that it's easy to use.
Exactly, because being a transaction coordinator can be a lucrative business, but if you don't have the right systems in place to support that when you are managing 20, 25, 30, 50, however many transactions at once, it could feel like you're drowning all the time. And the
Mm-hmm.
moment I did sign up for my first transaction management platform, I was instantly like, wow, why didn't, even though it was difficult to set up, once I was able to use something to that effect of more automation, I'm not manually writing, printing checklists and doing things on paper. I realized the benefits of having that. And like you said, it just brings more ease into the process. And I'm not having to become a programmer and a TC to figure these things out. And I think that's amazing. And that's so great. So right now, how can people sign up? Like, where do we go? How do we do this? I know you have a 14-day free trial at the time of this recording.
Mm-hmm.
So break down all of that.
So pretty simple. You just go to realestatelifeline.app and you'll see smack dab in the center there a button to sign up for your 2-week free trial. You do have to enter in a credit card at your sign up, but it doesn't get charged until your free trial is up. And you'll create your account, and quickly the fee allowed right into your dashboard. And like I said, you can immediately start working. We have default task lists, and we will have default emails in there as well. I think we actually do have a few, but it's going to grow even more once we're kind of done and set up. And you can just plug and play. If I have a step in there that you don't use, you just delete it. If you have 4 more steps that you need to add, you just need to add those 4 instead of adding. I think I counted up, out of all my tasks lists, the average I have is about 50, I feel like, tasks, individual steps that I would do. And that's a lot of inputting. So hopefully we save a lot of our users that time, and they can just immediately start putting in their files and start working.
That's awesome. And definitely go to realestatelifeline.app. Keep that in mind. .app, A-P-P, but all of the information will be in the description below for you to access the link immediately. So you're not having to remember, was it .com or .app? But if you are listening right now,
I am.
yeah, right. Take out your phone, and it's accessible from your phone as well, mobile.
Yes.
Perfect. So take out your phone, get on your computer, wherever you're listening, unless you're driving. Don't do this while you're driving, but sign up for the free trial. And if you are someone that's using it, leave a review, leave a comment, like tell someone about it, share it on your social media platform so her platform can grow and get more awareness. But no, I think it's amazing. And it was important for me to, open up my platform for you to talk about that and for people to get to know the people behind the scenes as well. And, the reasons why we do these things or how we did these things, because there could be someone out there that wants to develop not the exact same thing you're doing, but to develop a program or an app, and you providing that insight of, well, I funded it myself. I'm working with just me and my husband, and this is how I got developers, just asking and not giving up along that way is going to be very helpful to the next people coming up behind us or interested in doing this type of work. And so I thank you for being transparent and open with that, your journey, because like I said, it's not easy work no matter what we do. But if you're passionate about something, you're going to get it done one way or another. It may not happen overnight, but it will happen eventually. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to tell us about the app before we wrap up the episode, or anything you're working on? But
I don't think so. We are still working on a lot more features to come. But yeah, signing up and becoming a paying user, those funds go right now back into the program. We're not taking a cut at this point, as owners. It's all of it is getting poured back into the software so that our users can benefit and become mini investors essentially. We really listen to their voice and what their needs are, and we take polls of what features they want to see worked on next, because the things that I thought were important apparently weren't as important to our users, and so we've reprioritized a lot of the upcoming features to fulfill their needs immediately versus what I thought was going to be their needs. So really just leave feedback constantly of what you think could be needed or improved or what you're liking so that we can continue on.
that's great. And just have patience with each other. Have patience with Kristina, their company. They're a brand new startup in a sense. And are you taking crowdfunding or anything like that at the time as well, or still just funding it yourself?
We are going to be starting to look at investors or potentially crowdfunding, but as of right now, we haven't. So if you are an investor or know investors who are interested, definitely send us your info and we'll be happy to connect.
There you go, people. If you don't want to have to do the work, but you have the money and the capital, send it Kristina's way.
Exactly.
You will be investing in something amazing and awesome and transformative for an industry that often gets overlooked or just left in the shadows. So thank you for that. But as we wrap up, thank you again for being here and sitting down with me. I think this is an awesome conversation, and you are welcome back anytime to talk more about real estate business, the ups and downs, and the wild stories along the way. But for someone starting out brand new, coming into this industry, not necessarily I want to be a TC or I want to be a realtor. They just are curious about real estate, but just being their own boss and having that lifestyle, right? What is something that what's some advice you would give this person to just stay empowered and to be able to thrive in this very intimidating, often just fast-paced world that we live in, to not get lost along the way, but just to what would you tell them?
I think I would have to quote my therapist who actually said, failure is just feedback. So don't take it as, oh, this agent didn't want to work with me, or this client didn't want to work with me, or this path didn't work. It just means it's feedback. Look at why and use it to carve your next path, your next step. I think is the biggest thing, because I have felt so many times like maybe I made a mistake of going in the industry or doing this, that, the other. And in the end, it has been exactly what was needed for me to continue to grow into something else.
That was perfect. That was, and shout out to therapy. Shout out to therapists, shout out to therapy, coaches, mentors, anyone along the way that can just keep you, in alignment with yourself and accountable. And that's
trusting yourself.
Trusting
really
yourself.
Trusting yourself to that you know what you and your business needs and wants.
Absolutely. And if anything, I am more inspired now and ready. Like, well, what am I going to start? Like, what do I want to develop? No, the podcast. That's what I want to develop.
Yes.
So I like to end the podcast with asking my guests, what is one goal you don't mind sharing, just to keep yourself a little accountable, with the audience, to either accomplish sooner than later or in the long run?
I think right now our next biggest step is getting all the pieces in place for finding that investor, so that again we can grow the program faster. To me, it's not a matter of that it won't get done. It's a matter of trying to do it fast. So, check in with us, see if we found that investor to, in a few months that really helps it grow faster.
That's perfect. I love it. So we'll check back in about a year and see how we're doing. I believe and trust in what you're doing, and I know you're going to do great things. So congratulations on everything. This has been awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for agreeing. Definitely. Thank you for agreeing to be on the show. I know this won't be the last time you'll be here. And make sure everyone goes to, well, actually, no, the floor is yours. Tell people where they could follow you, get in contact with you, work with you as a TC as well. So go for it.
Oh my gracious, so many things. We do have a Facebook business page, both for my construction services, it's Real Estate Aid. And if you're looking for Real Estate Lifeline, we have a Facebook page for that as well. We also have Instagrams for both. And if you need to email me for Real Estate Aid transaction services, it's help@realestateaid.net. And if you are looking to email me as Real Estate Lifeline, you can reach myself or Austin at owner@realestatelifeline.com.
Awesome. So all of that information will be in the description of this episode, as well as on my website as well in the blog section. So be sure to get in contact with Kristina and see what she's up to, work with her, invest with her, whatever she needs, see how you can help and offer up and just have the conversation. I think it's amazing what you're doing, and major props again. I keep congratulating you because I think it's a big deal. It's a big deal what you're doing. It's not easy.
Thank you.
It's not, like I said, it does take courage to step out of your comfort zone or even your own wheelhouse and knowledge of things, like to enter the tech world. That is, one may say more saturated or just impossible, but here you are. So congratulations on everything. And this has been another episode of the Transaction Care Podcast. If you want to get in touch with me, just go to transactioncarepodcast.com. All of the information for this episode, as well as previous episodes, live there. As you're listening to this one, go listen to some other ones. Tell me your thoughts, tell me your feelings. I'd love to hear from you guys. And if you want to buy merch, go to tccarepackage.com. And I'm on YouTube. The podcast will also live on YouTube very soon. So make sure you're subscribed and staying in touch. So my name is Lillian Hernandez, aka Lily like the flower, because we are learning and growing together. And until the next episode, care for yourself, care for your wealth. Your time is worth it. Let's coordinate. Talk soon.
Thanks. Bye.